As Chag Sameach to everyone. And before we start, I'll just let you know who I am, because I have two congregants here, but other than that, I don't know anyone in the group. So my name is Naomi Efrat, and I'm from Kehilat Halev, which is a sister congregation to Beit-Daniel in central Tel Aviv. We're the younger, funkier side of Reform Judaism. And our congregation is very lovely and musical and happy and very LGBT friendly and people friendly in general. And so I'm happy to be here with you tonight. And before we start, I wanted to say that Shavuot is the night when the Torah comes to us from the sky. And that's the tradition, and that's what we celebrate today. And so there's, I'm just reading this book of Shlomo Carlebach. And in the book, he says that there is a concept called mochin de katnut ve'mochin de gadlut. So mochin is moach, that's our brain. So we have the action of our brain. And mochin de katnut is the brain of the little things. And then on the night of Shavuot, we turn to the brain of the big things. So when I think of that, I think of the entire year, when I'm very busy with all those very tiny things, shopping, buying, raising kids, what should I do before what at work, how to zoom into my meeting and not mess up with Zoom, you know, all the little things. And then comes Shavuot, and suddenly there's this silence and this time where we can just let go of everything, as now nothing can go wrong anymore. You know, we're on spot. So the Torah is coming from the sky, and we're here in the study, and I can't mess up. At least for the next 30 minutes, I'm in safe zone. No one can come crying or running to me or disturb me with the things of the little brain, the mochin de katnut. So that is my quest for our study tonight. And I called this session Pirkei Avot for Shavuot, but there is something that I would like to speak about even before Pirkei Avot. And I'm going to put it on the screen. So I hope everyone can see. Okay. Just let me know that you can see the screen. Can someone let me know? Okay, good. So we're going to read Hebrew and then English. So if there's anyone here that's willing to read the Hebrew part on the top left from Zechariah, and then we'll have a volunteer for English. יש מישהו?
אני יכול.
יופי, נהדר, תודה. כן, אריאל.
להתחיל?
כן, לך על זה.
So say I, the 4th, 5th, 7th, and 10th day of fasting shall become days of rejoice and happiness, holidays and good times. And the truth and peace shall love each other.
And in Hebrew?
In Hebrew, כה אמר אדוני צבאות, צום הרביעי וצום החמישי וצום השביעי וצום העשירי, יהית יהודה לששון ולשמחה ולמועדים טובים, והאמת והשלום אהבו.
Okay, תודה רבה. So what do we have here? We have a story where the nation's saddest days, which are the days of fasting, the 4th and 5th and 7th and 10th day of fasting, become days of happiness. They become days of rejoice. It's something that we cannot even consider happening. And actually, maybe today and what's going on in the country, and seeing all the commotion and all the riots on the streets, it's even hard to envision this may be a possibility. And so Adonai says, specifically, dafka, these saddest days and hardest days where we fast, we mourn everything that we've done wrong, will become days of happiness. And he concludes with a very interesting saying, "V'ha'emet ve'ashalom ahavu," and the truth and the peace shall love each other. And on the way to this Zoom lesson, I thought about these two things, truth and peace. And I thought of them specifically with regard to relationships. And I thought about how when we're in a relationship, in a romantic relationship, in the beginning of a relationship, everything that our partner does seems perfectly sane and perfectly normal, and they can have sometimes very bizarre requests or very, very bizarre offers, but everything looks normal, and we give generously, a lot more than we usually would with another person. If I take an example so if I have a very fresh relationship, maybe in the beginning I can, wake up in the morning and say, okay, let's go to Italy today. And that will seem romantic and normal and beautiful because we're in love, right? But 2 or 3 years after, this may seem, insane. I'm not going to do that right now. I don't have the money, or I can't pay for this, or I'm not going to take all your needs and desires and put them in front of mine. And so I see it as two different aspects. On one side, there's the aspect of truth. What is the right thing to do now? Or what is the justice? And the second is the peace. I wish to maintain peace in a relationship, but on the other hand, I know that there's a truth. I know that there's something that needs to happen differently to become the truth. And so I'm going to read an interpretation on this very complex sentence, that the truth and the peace shall love. And then after I read it, I'm going to ask you to try to interpret what you think is the relationship between the two. And this interpretation is from Sanhedrin, Tosefta. I'll read it in Hebrew and then in English. Kol makom sheyesh emet, en shalom. V'kol makom sheyesh shalom, en mishpat. Ve'ezehu mishpat emet sheyesh bo shalom. Heve omer, ze habitzua, הפשרה. So any place with truth has no peace. And any place with peace has no law. And what is the law of truth? A one with peace. So this sounds like, like an SAT question, a very difficult riddle. So, if you have truth, you have no peace. But if you have peace, then you don't consider the law. But at the end of the day, the two connect, the truth and the peace together. And so I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the group that feels connected to this or would like to explain. And I'm going to keep it on the screen so that we can look at it together.
I would say that obviously there is the truth. The truth is always also a perspective of each person. There's one truth, but there are also always different sides of the truth. What I see there, if you say to someone the truth, do it within reason, that it's in a way peaceful, that you I'm not sure if I explained it right, but
if you had to drop one of them, if you had to say, I'm either going to be a peaceful person or a truthful person of justice, which one would you choose?
This I can't decide at the moment because it's a very tough question. That's what I'm saying. I think you can't really choose, and that's what it means, that you can't, you can't have the truth has no peace, because exactly what you said, can't really choose.
Yeah, of
I
course.
feel like it's very difficult to choose one of that. If you're a lawyer, you need to choose, you know, if you're a judge, you have to choose the law. But
Of course. Anyone else would like to share thoughts about the contrast between truth and peace?
I have.
I think I disagree.
Okay, we'll have Lenny and then Ariel.
I think I disagree because if you have peace, then you have the law, which brings the peace because everyone could agree to a unified country, nation, or community. The truth is deceptive, however, because my truth may not be the same as your truth. If the truth is the same, no problem. But if the truth is different, such as we have with the political parties, or then we have a problem. And one truth may not lead to peace with the other truth. So if you have a nation of laws, though, then the laws will make the truth.
Thank you. I strongly agree. Toda. Ariel?
I think, Naomi, as usual, you found something very, very profound when you brought this. And it is a very unusual concept and quite a Jewish concept. And there is a very famous joke about a rabbi who sits as a judge or some kind of, he has to decide between two people who are fighting. They were partners and they have a disagreement. So the first one says his side of the issue, and the rabbi says, you're absolutely right. And then his partner who was fighting with him says something else, and the rabbi says, you're absolutely right. So the Rebbitzin, she comes out from behind the curtain and she says, Rabbi, you maybe are senile or something. You just said to two people who just said the opposite to both of them, you're right. So what did the rabbi say to the Rebbitzin? He said, you're right too. So I think every person thinks that they hold the whole truth. Maybe this is one of the major problems that we're facing in nowadays politics. Everybody thinks that the truth is only with them. And when you think like that, there is no peace. For peace, you have to understand that there is many kinds of truth. And truth is something that you can maybe, it may be more a soft issue and maybe more, how to say, lekofef oto, to bend it or to mold it in a way that maybe two truths that are separate can live together in peace.
Okay, thank you. So I strongly agree.
thank you. I also want to just say thank you, Ariel. You put my thoughts in clearer words. So that's more the thought I had, but I couldn't express it like that. So that's it.
Yeah, so I think always, as always, Ariel, you put things into very clear words. And I think that is the place which we're facing today. If I look at the political atmosphere of the country in the past few days, I have a very strict opinion about what's happening and about who is to blame and what should be done and what is happening on the streets and why it's happening and who formed this situation and so on. But if I keep to these truths so strongly, I may get nowhere, If I don't give a chance or a place of compassion, even to those which I think are most wrong, then we're going to stay in this loop forever. And unfortunately, it's not just about me. It has to be about some other people giving up on some level of their truth in order to allow space for peace. So that is my little understanding of this sentence or statement. But the truth is that I promised you Pirkei Avot for tonight, and we didn't even read Pirkei Avot yet, and we have a little bit more than 10 minutes. So I want to give a tiny introduction and say that there's a very interesting tradition for the time that's between Passover to Shavuot. which, how many days do we have? 50, right. We have 50 days. So the statement is to read a little bit of Pirkei Avot for every day of those 50 days of the period of the Omer. And there are also 5 chapters of Pirkei Avot, but there's a problem, because there's 6 weeks between Pesach and Shavuot. So how do we divide 5 chapters into 6 weeks? Anyone have any idea? So the answer is actually really funny. The answer is that Pirkei Avot originally had only 5 chapters. And then they said, guys, look, this is a problem. We need to fill in 6 weeks. So they gathered all different parts of learnings and teachings from different years after the writing of the Mishnah and added them to the 6th Pirkei Avot, the 6th chapter. And that is what we're going to read from today. So if you understand a little bit about the way Pirkei Avot is written, this 6th chapter is written in a very different way. You can see that it's a lot more modern. And I will put it on the screen now, thanks, Holly, apart from Pirkei Avot, and then we will discuss it a little bit. So here we go. Lega. Do you see the screen? You see the Pirkei Avot?
Yes.
Okay, good. And so we are told Torah is greater than the priesthood or sovereignty, because sovereignty is acquired with 30 virtues and the priesthood with 24, and Torah is with 48. And now we're going to read the 48. But we just finished saying that there are 50 days of the Omer. So why are we reading 48? Any idea? So the answer is that the first day is the day of Pesach, so we don't read. And the 5th day is the day of celebration. So we're finished reading. So we're left with 48 days to practice Torah. And there are 48 virtues or qualities for each one of these days, which means that on the first day of study, you should be choosing the first, and then on the second, and so on. And so if there's a lovely volunteer that would like to read us the text in English from these are, and then read us the 48, I would be really, really honored.
I
can read.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Oh, all right, I'll go. These are study, listening, verbalizing, comprehension of the heart, awe, fear, humility, joy, purity, serving the sages, companionship with one's contemporaries, debating with one's students, tranquility, study of the scriptures, study of the Mishnah, minimizing engagement in business, minimizing socialization, minimizing pleasure, minimizing sleep, minimizing talk, minimizing gaiety, slowness to anger, good-heartedness, faith in the sages, acceptance of suffering, knowing one's place, satisfaction with one's lot, qualifying one's words, not taking credit for oneself, likableness, love of God, love of humanity, love of charity, love of justice, love of rebuke, fleeing from honor, lack of arrogance and learning, reluctance to hand down rulings, participating in the burden of one's fellow, judging him to the side of merit, correcting him, bringing him to a peaceful resolution of his disputes, deliberation and study, asking and answering, listening and illuminating, learning in order to teach, learning in order to observe, wising one's teacher, exactness in conveying a teaching and saying something in the name of its speaker. Thus we have learned one who says something in the name of its speaker brings redemption to the world.
Thank you, Lukey. Lukey, right? Is that your name?
Luke, but you can call me Lukey if you want.
Okay, thank you, Lukey. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you guys to try and think of one virtue out of the 48 which you feel mostly connected to, not just generally in your lifestyle, but specifically today with everything that's happening in your life and in the country, and sharing it with us, sharing only one virtue which you choose to take upon yourself on this Shavuot night.
I choose humility.
Okay.
I think this is very much called for today. And I choose it for myself, of course, but for the rest of the people also.
Yeah. It's also a little bit related to lack of arrogance in learning, I think. Okay. Thank you, Lynn. I also realized that many of these virtues are very different from today. If I think of anyone trying to convince us as modern people to minimize pleasure, or to minimize talk, or to minimize socialization, or even to minimize sleep, they would be in trouble. This is not something that you say to the modern liberal people. So thank you, Lynn, and I would like to hear a few more of you.
I will choose.
I think studying of the
I can say,
Wait, we'll have Cindy and then Lenny.
I will choose companionship with one's contemporaries.
Okay, what does that mean to you?
To me, well, right now, many people that I know want to talk about situation, and they don't. There's a lot of friends of mine here that are by themselves. I mean, their families are in a different place, another country, and just to listen to them and to let them know that I'm here for them, and they also let me know that they're there for me. So that's companionship, especially these times.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you. Lenny?
Well, we're here today studying Mishnah, and we're studying the scriptures. So that would be appropriate, although we study them every day and we study them on Shabbat as well. But today is that special day of learning. And so studying of the Mishnah today, of course, the book of Ruth, which we're not going to get to, but studying the book of Ruth and studying the Mishnah, to me, is important for today.
Actually, after me, Lynn is going to have a teaching of the book of Ruth in this same Zoom. So just so you know, that's also possible. That's another study that's very much accepted and possible tonight, and we can actually have happen. So thank you, Lenny. And is there anyone else who would like to share?
I would also say lack of arrogance in learning. I think similar to what was said about what Lenny said about humility earlier, but I was thinking of it more in the context of the sort of the questions that you take to any sort of learning situation, whether it's something like tonight or academic studies. If you come with a preset set of conclusions, or you sort of already think you know all the questions that there are to ask, and you're not receptive to people bringing in those other perspectives, you're not going to have those moments of clarity or discovery or surprise that you can get if you bring a more humble approach to learning. If you acknowledge that maybe you not only do you not have all the answers, but maybe you are not even asking all the right questions to begin with.
Right. It also very much connects, I feel, to our conversation about truth and peace, or justice and peace. If I keep my arrogance aside and allow myself to really learn, then I might find that there's a new truth. So thanks for that, Luki. And maybe there's someone that can help me understand the next one down: reluctance to hand down rulings. What are they talking about? Any idea? Now I'm now I'm looking at the translation. So in Hebrew, they say ve'eno sameach behora'ah. So I think it's a complementary statement to the lack of arrogance in learning, lack of arrogance in teaching, or be careful that you don't find yourself in a spot where you're so much in that excitement of that stage, stage happiness, that you talk so much that you don't allow your participants to share anything, or that you don't allow anyone else to learn except from you. I know for myself that very often when I'm in my Kehilat, in my congregation, I can get so enthused about what I'm talking about that I don't realize, and the time has passed and I talk too much. And really, there's so much for me to learn from the people around me. And I think that's the point, to stop and say, I can learn from others. It's not just arrogance in learning, but I don't need to be in the leading position all the time. I can hand down the rulings to others and continue to still be an active leader. And so I also wanted to discuss the ones that we most disagree with, but I will leave that for us to do individually because our time is up. And I really encourage you to log into the sixth chapter of Pirkei Avot and Mishnah number 6. So it's 6 and 6, and to read into the list and try to see which is the one which you mostly disagree with, and how much the world has changed since the time of the Mishnah, and what of these recommendations really we can keep away, and perhaps alternate them with others. And so I really enjoyed this half hour. And I can also say that I enjoyed that it was also just a half hour, so that I have the privilege of also learning from others, like we just said. And next after me is Line Bleicher, which is a wonderful teacher and a beautiful person to learn from. And she's going to speak with us about Megillat Ruth, the story of Ruth and Naomi. And so, Lynn, I'm going to make you host. And as for me, I'm going to return to my physical, actual face-to-face study. And it was lovely to meet everyone. And I really hope to meet you soon face-to-face. As toda rabba.
Toda rabba.
Thank you, Naomi.
Chag Sameach.
Thank you. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Hey, Robbie! Great to see you.
Hi.
Bye.
Bye. Chag Sameach.
Yafeh. Robbie, it's great to hear from you. And also, Mickey, thanks for that comment. We will discuss it more.
So Naomi, just make Lynn the host now.
Yeah, I can't. I don't have. Oh, she is the host. She is the host now. So it's okay.
Okay. Yofi. Okay, thank you very much, Naomi, and we go on to Lynn.
Chag Sameach, Naomi. Thank you very much. And I'd like to record. No, cancel. Well, okay, Yael, will you record that?
It's recorded. We'll send you the recording later on. Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you, Naomi. And I'm already going to not do what you advised us to do. I'm not going to listen to anybody. I'm going to just speak myself, because a half an hour is very short, and I have so much to say. So I apologize in advance, but maybe if we can stretch it a little bit at the end, maybe we can discuss things at the end. And I'm gonna a little bit rush through what I want to say. I called this talk What's in a name? Reflections on Megillat Ruth, and somebody said, what a shame we're not going to speak about Ruth, but so we're going to speak about it a little bit anyway. And first of all, I want to say that although those are very, very difficult times here in Israel, it's still a Chag. It's a beautiful Chag, and I want to wish all of you Chag Sameach. And tomorrow, as we know, in synagogue, we will read Megillat Ruth, which is a beautiful short story in just 4 chapters, but from which we can learn a lot. And I think we can even learn a lot in Megillat Ruth about what's going on today in Israel and in the world in general. So in the story of Ruth, it's also a difficult time. Just like we are having a difficult time, it's a difficult time there too. There's a famine going on. There's a family that chooses exile. Then there is more hardship. All the men die. The husband and the 2 sons, everybody dies. As a consequence, there's poverty and seemingly no sustainable future for the survivors, which brings forth depression. Not a great atmosphere. But then, just like in Megillat Esther, which we read on Purim, there's a flip-flop, a turnaround. And we see that towards the end, we arrive to a place where the famine is over, the exiles return to the homeland, a solution is found that secures a decent future, new life replaces the lives that have been taken by death, depression is replaced by joy, and even through that new life, the future of not only that specific family, but the whole nation, the future of the whole nation is secured. And here I'm hinting, of course, to the fact that Ruth is the great-grandmother of King David. What I want to say is that I think it's not a coincidence that this flip-flop happens in the 2 only Megillot where that are called after women, and where the women are the heroines. And maybe this is something that women have a capability of, is to make a flip-flop, to turn reality around. And this happens in Megillot, which bear the name of women. And I want to talk about what's in a name. What's the concept of a name? I have to say that I'm basing myself on an article that I read online in My Jewish Learning, and the article is by Yael Ziegler. So I'm going to share the text with you. Does anybody not read Hebrew? Does anybody need the English? Are you all okay? Are you all okay with?
I do.
Okay.
If it's possible.
Okay, sure. So we'll. I'll read the Hebrew, and then the English is always under this. Okay.
Okay.
So let me share the screen. Okay, you see it? Yes. Give me a sign if you see it. Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Okay. So in the very first verse of the Megillah, we meet a family with no names. ויהי בימי שפוט השופטים, ויהי רעב בארץ, וילך איש מבית לחם יהודה לגור בשדה מואב, הוא ואשתו ושני בניו. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah with his wife and his two sons went to Moab. So it's a man and his wife, and the sons, they have no names. Immediately in the second verse, all of a sudden, everybody is named. Veshema ish, you know what, I'll read just the English, it'll be shorter. So the man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name was Naomi, and his two sons were named Machlon and Chilion. Okay, now all of a sudden, everybody is named. We see, so from the very beginning of the Megillah, that it calls our attention to the fact that this story moves between being named or being nameless. Now the story continues. We know the story. We know that at a certain point after they go back to Bethlehem, Naomi sends her daughter-in-law Ruth to kind of seduce the rich man Boaz, in which field she was gleaning. The purpose of this action is called in Hebrew, lehakim shem hamet al nachalato. That means to restore, she should do that, she should seduce Boaz in order to restore the name of her son, of her son who died. Restore the name. We know that what we want to restore is the future, the riches, the possibilities, but it's called restoring the name of the dead person. Here we have Boaz, and we will note that the important characters in the story are all the important characters, meaning the characters that will make the story move ahead, the characters that will change the story, and with the story they will change his story also, they will change history. All these people are named, and the others are not named. So when they come back to Bethlehem, we are told at the beginning of chapter 2, we are called now Naomi had a kinsman on her husband's side, a man of substance, a rich guy of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. We know immediately he's not just a rich man, he's not just a relative, he has a name, his name is Boaz. And this is as compared to the other kinsmen who could also redeem the family, and he's the Goel, the redeemer, but we never know his name, and even at a certain point he's called Ploni Almoni. He's called so and so. I mean, this is not very respectful. He could be the redeemer of the family, but he's Mr. So-and-so, right? Not very, very important. And then we go to Naomi. Here is Naomi. And when Naomi returns to Bethlehem with her daughter-in-law, the people of the town here, Vatahom kol ha'ir alehen, vatomarno hazot Naomi. I didn't translate that. It means the whole city crowded around them. Here they come, the two women arrive to Bethlehem. The whole city comes to see who's coming. And they say, can this be Naomi? Why do they ask that? Because they remember Naomi as a younger woman. Maybe she was better looking. Now this woman that comes back is older, and she's poor, and she's probably looking pretty bad because of all the misfortune that happened to her. So they asked, could that be Naomi? By name, right? And Naomi immediately insists upon the fact, the meaning of her name. She says, do not call me Naomi, which means pleasant. Do not call me pleasant. Call me Mara, bitter, because Shaddai, God, has made my lot very bitter. My name is important. I want you to call me by name, but the name should reflect who I am. And today I am not Naomi, I am not pleasant. Today I am a bitter person with a bitter fate. She takes on another name with the opposite meaning, but she doesn't want anonymity. She wants to be called by name. It's important for her to have a name. And let's continue. We arrive to Ruth. When the people of the town say, ask, could that be Naomi? So they ask about Naomi, but Naomi is not alone. She comes there with Ruth. And nobody even asks about Ruth. Nobody asks, who is she? Nobody asks Naomi, but they didn't even ask themselves, who is this other person? They're not interested, and she stays without a name. Naomi has a name, Naomi or Mara, but her companion doesn't have a name. And Boaz, who will, where do I have Boaz? Here. Boaz will fill that name, that void of Ruth not having a name. From the very beginning, when she goes to glean in his fields and he arrives, he sees her, and the first thing he inquires about her identity. He asks, Lemi hana'ara azot, to whom is this young woman? So he doesn't ask who is this young woman, he asks to whom is she, who does she belong to? He wants to situate her. I mean, how do I relate to her? And to whom is she? So the guy who supervises the work in his field answers, Nara Moaviyahi. She is a Moabite young woman, and it goes on saying who came back with Naomi. But he doesn't say her name is Ruth. This is who she is. She's a Moabite. What does that mean? That means she's a foreigner. She's a foreigner. She's not one of us. So who cares what her name is? She's just a foreigner, right? And not only a foreigner, but a Moabite, which is a citizenship with which Israel had problems with. But then the fact that Boaz asks about her turns her from an unrecognized stranger to a person with an identity. And he draws the attention of both his worker, but also the reader, us, to the fact that he wants to stop considering this young woman as an object, as just a foreigner. He gives her the chance to have an identity. And he asks again about her identity when, after Naomi sends Ruth to seduce him in the middle of the night at the end of the festivities of the end of the harvest. We see in the middle of the night, the man gave a start and pulled back. Wow, there was a woman lying at his feet. And what does he do? Immediately he says, who are you? he sees a woman and he needs to know who she is. Who are you? And that gives Ruth the opportunity to say, Vatomer, Anochi Ruth Amatra. I am Ruth. Now she gives her name, her identity, and with modesty, she says, "I am your handmaid." I mean, you're a rich man. I'm your handmaid, but I am Ruth. And the word here is not ani. The word is anochi. Anochi is a very strong word to say I. It's the word that usually God, when God talks about himself, he says Anochi. So Ruth gets power from the fact that Boaz asks who she is. Who are you? What is your name? What do you represent, right? It allows her to regain her identity that was taken away because she was just a foreigner, right? And then we know that they get married and a child is born. And when the child is born, the whole city rejoices together with Naomi, not with Ruth, and declare that he will save Naomi of poverty and of difficulty in her old age. And the women of the city say, Vayikare Shmo, his name will be perpetuated in Israel. Again, we have the word name that comes back and back and back. So when we say here, his name will be perpetuated in Israel, it means in his name, we see the influence that he's going to have, his power of changing history. A name gives a story, gives a power over history. And then all the women neighbors gave him a name. It's a bit funny that the neighbors named the child, but this is an event that concerns them all. And they say a son is born to Naomi, not to Ruth, and they named him Oved. And immediately comes the description, they named him Oved. He was the father of Jesse, father of David. He has a name, and he's the father of somebody else important that we meet in the Tanakh. Yishai, Jesse is Yishai, and Yishai, of course, is the father of David. We call people by name. That gives them a place in history. Then after that, the last verses, I don't have them here. The last verses in the Megillah, contrarily to the beginning, you remember that in the first verse, there was no names. The characters had no names. The last 5 verses give us a whole list of names. That are only names, and it's a whole genealogy of King David, passing through Boaz and his son Oved, and arriving to King David. Those are the names now of the men who will build the history of our people. And I have to say that the women who are the heroines of this story and who make that whole all those events happen are not mentioned anymore. At the end of the Megillah, it's a list of names of men only, because the women at that point in the view of the Tanakh and ancient times, the women have finished what they had to do. What they had to do was to produce a child, if possible, a male child. So Ruth produced a child. It was taken in by Naomi, and then that child gives way to a list of men that will change the history of Israel. So this is the list. This is the line of Peretz. Peretz begot Chetzron, Chetzron begot Ram, Ram begot Aminadav, Aminadav begot Nachshon, Nachshon begot Salmon, Salmon begot Boaz, here we are, Boaz begot Oved, Oved begot Yishai, and Yishai begot David. And that's the last word of the Megillah. We've arrived to David. So let me stop sharing for a moment so that I can look at you guys. A name is what you use when you look at a person in the eye, when you recognize him as a separate, a distinct person with rights, with an identity, with a history, with a present, a past, a future. When you call a person by name, you make sure that this person has all these all these qualities. He's got a history, he's got a personality, he's got rights. And you know that on Yom HaShoah, we sing over and over the song Lekol Ish Yesh Shem. Every man has a name. These people who disappeared from the world and from history, we read their names, we call their names, and we make them live this way. By saying their names, we make them live. Now, the story of Ruth, as we were told in the very beginning, in the very first verse, takes place in B'yimei Shvot HaShoftim, in the time of the judges in the history of Israel. And this is a time, one of probably the most horrible times in the history of Israel. Horrible things happen in that book. It is described so, all right, I don't want to share it again. I'll just read the sentence to you. Bayamim hahem, ein melech b'Yisrael, ish ayashar be'einav yaseh. In those days, there was no king in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes. Now, I don't want to go into politics. This is not the purpose here, but it does remind us a little bit of what's going on today. There is no leadership, there is no government, and everyone does what is right in his own eyes, and that leads to no good. And I think we can identify with that. In the book of Judges, we see a society that dehumanizes the other. There are a few stories that I will recall from the book of Judges, where unnamed characters are treated as objects and have a very terrible fate. There is Yiftach's daughter. She doesn't have a name. She's Yiftach's daughter. She doesn't have a personality or anything. But she's treated as an object, and she ends up being offered as a human sacrifice. Okay, she's not a human. She doesn't have a name. She will be sacrificed. There is a story of the concubine of Giv'ah, which is maybe the most horrible story in the Tanakh, where this woman without a name, she's called the concubine of Giv'ah, she doesn't have a name, is brutally abused and objectified, both by her husband and by the city in which she ends up, the city of Giva. She ends up being raped, mass raped, murdered and cut up into pieces, into 12 pieces, one piece being sent to each one of the tribes of Israel. And this story, and it's no wonder, this story ends up by bringing Israel to civil war. Again, I don't want to go into politics, but maybe it rings a bell of what's going on. The fact that there is no leadership and that people are not regarded as people, they do not have a name, they're not regarded as people, brings us to a breaking apart of society and of human relationships, and civil war in the time of the judges. And I think we're getting pretty close to that here too right now. But what creates that famous flip-flop, that famous turnaround of which we spoke at the beginning? This is when you treat people as human beings, when you give them respect, when you recognize them, when you give them a name. And this is what Ruth brings to society at that time. The quality that she is identified with is chesed, compassion, gentleness, giving. Because of that, Ruth is chosen to become the beginning of the Messianic times through King David, her great-grandson. And King David at the time is the kingdom, the fact that the first kings, it starts with Shaul and then David, put an end to the chaos of the period of the judges. When there is leadership again, then the society can be built again. Chesed, that quality of Ruth, is the main quality of the Torah. We have Torat Emet and Torat Chesed, and Emet and Chesed, when they come together, you always have Chesed first. They say Chesed ve'emet, not Emet ve'Chesed. So compassion and goodness takes precedent even on truth, and that reminds us a little bit of what we studied with Naomi just before me. This is why we read the book of Ruth on Shavuot, the day when we receive the Torah, so that we are reminded that the Torah is a Torah of Chesed. That's it. Now, if you want to stay, I think we've just finished the half hour. If you have any questions, if you want to stay, I think it's okay if we stay a little longer. If you want to comment or ask questions, I'll be happy to stay with you for a little longer.
Okay, if anyone has a question, they can unmute themselves and we can hear them.
No questions.
Okay, Lynn, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
It was great hearing you. I'm inviting you for the last lesson in the Hebrew track. If anyone is interested, I'm sending you the link now.
Thank you. Chag Sameach. Let's bring
Chag
chesed into the
Sameach.
world, guys.
חג
Bye.
שמח, כל
חג
הכבוד,
שמח,
תודה
תודה.
רבה
Bye
לי.
bye.
Bye. Chag Sameach.